going to start InDesign with fresh preferences. On a Mac, it's a little trickier than it is on a PC. On a PC, you're going to hold down Shift, Control, and Alt. On a Mac, you're going to hold down Shift, Option, Command, and Control, and then click on the icon. So let's give that a try. I'm holding them down. And when this arrives, you want to say yes, you want to delete the InDesign preference files. Once InDesign has started up, this is the interface you will have. And so you have lots of options like we do with many of our other Adobe products. Like you can start with a preset, or you can create something new, or you can open something that exists. You can also check out the Learn tab, which will give you tutorials, and so that will also be over here. So we are going to be creating a letter size document, but we don't want to just go with their presets necessarily. We want to customize it a little bit. So we're going to go to Create New, and by default, you have a letter size document, except these numbers look a little different than what we're used to. What you're looking at here is it in measurements of picas. So picas are a measure in type and typography, and we are used to working in inches, so we're going to switch units to inches. We do want our page oriented in portrait, not landscape. We can have facing pages turned on. Basically, that's as if you were laying out a book and you would have the pages facing each other. So we can turn this on or off. It's up to you. You have to decide how many pages your document's going to be. If you have columns in it, imagine a newspaper with multiple columns. The column gutter is the space between the columns. We also can set up margins and bleed and slug. So let's talk about these. Margins is how close to the edge of the page you want your type to be. And it's just a guide, but things outside of the things outside the margins will print. We're going to set for our document them at 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to hit this down arrow and it will go incrementally down. And because I have this chain turned on, they all change together. Bleed is the space outside of the page that your print will go to. So if you imagine your print going to the edge of a page, then you need to have it set to be full bleed. How far does that go? So we don't want it right at the very edge of the page. We want that to be a little bit more. So we're going to set it at 1/8 of an inch, which is 0.125 inches. Again, we want them all linked. Slug is an area that you can have outside of your document that does print, but it's not for the final product, and it's a place you can put notes and things like that. We're not going to have any slugs for our project. You can also turn on preview, which will take a little bit of time and then opens a preview for you to see. So this inner line is your margin, and this outer line is your bleed. And then say create. When InDesign starts up, you are automatically set in the Essentials workspace. And so we're going to change this Essentials workspace, and we might flip-flop between this and another one. And the other one I want to bring your attention to is Essentials Classic. So the reason I want to show you Essentials Classic is that inside here, what we see is our controls over some of our tools that we might be using. This is also available in the window menu in Control. But the nice thing about the Essentials workspace is that it shows us the Properties panel, which we can also open. So you can customize your workspace in any way you want. If you're on a PC, you may not see the application frame, in which case things look a little different than the way we're working, and you can see your desktop. So if you want to have all of your tabs, windows, panels all in the same location, then turn on the application frame. Much like in Photoshop and Illustrator, we also have our menu headings. We also have a toolbar along the left-hand side of our page. You can see a color picker, which looks very similar to the one in Illustrator. You also have a button here for text. If you're working on a version of InDesign that is earlier than 2021, you may not see these options. Also, like many of our tools in Photoshop and Illustrator, some of these tools have additional tools that can be seen if you click and hold down on the arrow. Also visible in our workspace is the rulers. And the rulers can also be found by turning on or off hide rulers or show rulers. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Command R. Also, much like our other Adobe programs, if you want to zoom in or zoom out, you can use the hand tool and the zoom tool, or you can also use your modifier keys, spacebar to get the hand tool, the spacebar plus the Control or Command key to zoom in, and the Control and Alt key to zoom out. In InDesign, we also have tools like the Selection tool and the Direct Selection tool, the Pen tool, the Rectangle or Shape tools. InDesign is a layout program. It's not a program that we would use to create high-end graphics or to create a logo or fancy text. We did all that in Photoshop and in Illustrator. We are just going to be using InDesign to place all those objects so that we can make a multiple page document. However, for our project, we are only making one page. To bring in our graphics, we need to import or place them into frames. We can define areas with frame holders and then place objects inside them, or we can bring in our objects and then resize them. The order in which you do it is up to you. Let's start by setting up some layout. So I'm going to grab the Rectangle Frame tool. And the Rectangle Frame tool allows me to put in a placeholder of where I would like an image to go. It is also a way to visualize the placement of objects. So now that I have a rectangle here, I can import or bring in and place my image inside this frame. To do that, I go to the File menu and go to Place. Navigate to your document, and it places it in there. The problem is that I'm only seeing a small portion of the image. Let me show you what that image looks like. So this image has lots more, but what I'm looking at in InDesign is just the center of the image. To see the entire image, I'm going to select this frame and I'm going to zoom out so I can see more. When I select this, you can see that a frame shows up, and that's the real size of my image. So I can have this frame set up, but the image really lives over here. So if I move this, it's just kind of like a viewfinder for my image. This can be a little disconcerting and confusing, but you do have control over this image. I can resize it. My best bet is to hold down my shift to keep it constrained, and I can see a little preview of what that image looks like. I could have also held down my Alt key, which would resize from the center. So I can see that my image doesn't quite fit in my frame the way I want it to. I have another option. I'm going to do a Command 0 or Control 0 on a PC to get it back to full screen. So I'm going to select this and delete it. So this is now gone from my image. From my document, I don't have it anymore. Another way to do it without using a frame first is to go to the File menu and just place an image into our document. So I'll get that same image and I'll say Open. Now it's attached to my cursor, and I can say, well, I want it to be here and go across my page, maybe this far. This is the actual proportion of that image. So it is completely within the frame and it's not living outside of it. I can see the entire image now. But this image is still staying inside a frame. So if I want to move the image inside, I can double click on the image. And it looks like my cursor's become a hand, but it has not. Instead, what I'm doing is moving and separating the image from the frame. So this is still a frame as if I got it from here, except there's an image in it. I'm going to do a Command Z to undo. Something you can do to prevent that from happening is in the Properties tab, go down to Frame Fitting and set it to Auto Fit. So what will happen then is as I change the size or ratio of this rectangle, it will resize the image to fit in it. When doing this, it's really important that you can see a blue outline around the image or in the frame. If it is brown, then you have the image selected. So be careful of that. Whichever method you choose, place and make sure that your image and the frame are appropriately sized for the area. Also within the frame fitting area of the Properties panel, you can also check out the Options button and decide how you want your content to fit the frame when placing objects on your page. Make sure to have any images go off into the bleed, but keep in mind that this part will not print on your page. It's there in case when the paper goes through the printer, it's offset a little bit or crooked. This will cover your bases and your image will be printed. And if it goes beyond the page a little bit, then you have some additional ink to hit it. So make sure that everything that you want is inside the borders of the page. Any text that you place should be inside the margins. Again, if the page prints crooked or out of alignment, then your text will still be visible. When creating content for a page, it's important to understand how pages and layers behave in InDesign. So I'm going to go over to the Pages tab and show you that we currently only have one page, and it is a right-facing page. So if you look at this sample right here, you can see that this is facing pages. So this is the right side of the page crease if this was a book. I'm going to open up my Layers panel. And in the Layers panel, I have one object so far. Now layers will be contextual and your objects will be contextual based on the page that you have. If you have multiple pages, which we do not, then layers and the content is assigned to a page, not just to a layer. Next, I will place the logo into my document. File, Place, find my logo, and Open. And then I can place my logo. Now that I have placed my logo and also my image, I'm curious to see what this would look like on a printed page. On the left-hand side, at the bottom of the toolbar, is the preview area. Currently I have it set to normal, where it will show me all of my bleed lines, my margins, page border, and also any other things like slug. If I click and hold that down, I can take a look at what it looks like with the preview. I can also look at what it looks like with the bleed only and with the slug. So since we have a bleed line, I'll put that on. And you can see where it'll bleed to. Or I'll look at it with preview. And now I don't see any of my guides, and this is what it would look like printed. I'll view normal now. So the W key on your keyboard, if you just hit it, will cycle through the different ways of viewing. Next, I would like to add a graphical element like a blue square or blue rectangle or a blue line. So I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and currently I can see that it is loaded with a stroke of black and a clear fill. And I can change the colors of this very easily, but first I'm going to just draw it. So once I've drawn it, I'm going to grab the selection tool so that it is selected, and I can go over to the appearance panel and change the colors. So I don't want to have a stroke on here, so I'm going to change that to none. And for my fill, I want it to be let's say, a solid color. You can pick from the swatches, which are the default colors that it comes with. Or you can go to this palette where you can customize the color. Right now, mine is set to grayscale, so I want to change that to, let's say, RGB. And then I could put in that hexadecimal number if I wanted to. And now it is that solid blue. Once that object is selected, I also have the ability to change its opacity. So over here is an opacity slider, and I can change it in there. I'm viewing this in preview mode to see what it looks like. And I have it overlapping a little bit on my image and partially on my screen, on the background. And I kind of like it there, so I'm going to leave it. I think I will also give my frame a stroke on the bottom. And I can also change the line weight. Perhaps you wanted your image to fill the entire screen or the entire page. I'm going to resize not just my frame, but also the image. So perhaps I like something like this. You want to make sure that your logo is on a transparent background. If it is not, if it's on a white background, then you're going to need to go back into Illustrator and resave this as a PNG file. A JPEG will put a white background on it, or whatever color is your background color. Or you can also try to put it on a white area. However, there's not too many white areas in any of these images, so that'll be difficult to do. Wherever it is, you want to make sure that it is legible and it doesn't disappear into the background. Next, we'll add some text. So I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm going to start by doing a text box. So much like in Illustrator, we can make text boxes, or we can do point type. So I'm going to write the slogan. It's not what we do. I'm going to include it's why we do it in another area. I'm just going to focus on this for now. So with this selected, I'm going to grab the selection tool, and now it's inside this box, but I want to change the font of it. I'm going to go to my character panel, or to the properties panel and the character area, and I'm going to select the font Rift or Rift Soft. So Rift Soft or Rift will be acceptable, and you may choose to use bold, light, fine, etc. I'm going to increase my font size, making sure to look at the entire page. I'm going to tighten up this box a little bit so it's easier to move it around. Also, I need to see where my margins are. I'm going to pull that in just a little bit. Next, I want to change the color of the font. I don't want it to be black. I want it to be Lexco blue. So I select the text, and I can go to either this tab over here in the toolbar for affecting the text, or I can go to the fill area in the appearance section of the properties panel. Either way will be fine. And now when I click on that, I can select the font color. And now my text has been changed. Conversely, I just undid. Conversely, I can go to the fill area and say I want to apply to the frame or to the text. And to the text, I don't want to apply this black. I do want to apply the correct color using the color picker. And now it's the correct color. So I added some periods after, it's not what we do, but I can't see them, and I have my little red indicator here telling me that there's more text than can be seen. So I can stretch that out to find that. Now, because I do like the way that this text came out, and I had to do so many different little changes to get it to be this way, I'm just going to duplicate it to get my other text box. So I'm going to hold down my Option key on my Mac or my Alt key on a PC, click and drag it, and I'm making a clone of it. And this one I'll just edit. Next, I want to emphasize the word what and why. I can select just the text itself, and I can change the font to, let's say, Rift Soft instead of regular to bold, or I can make it italicized. There's several ways to emphasize text. Let's say this is my finished product and I want to save my work or save my work for the day. I'm going to go File, Save As, give it a name, and you'll notice that the extension on it, or the suffix, is INDD, an InDesign document. If you are working at home and you have 2021 and you're going to be working in the lab for the rest of this, you want to change this from a 2021 version to an earlier version. So go File, Save As, or Save a Copy, and change it from a 2021 document to CS4 or later. You also need to save a version for the discussion boards. To do that, you need to export a PDF. You can either say Adobe PDF Presets and define or select a high quality print, or go to Export, and from here choose Adobe PDF Print. You may leave the default settings and say Export. Share this to the discussion board and save this and submit it to the homework assignment. Make sure to name them properly, as defined in the assignments.